Philippine military. In the midst of horrifying COVID conditions, the Philippines, I think, was the #2 worst affected by COVID in Southeast Asia. Where did the Philippines spending go? They made a $2 billion arms purchase from the United States for a fleet of helicopters to do counterinsurgency operations. And we can't let that stand. So I want to thank you all for letting me speak, letting me take up time. Want to call everyone to please look up and push for the PHRA, the Philippine Human Rights Act, that we're currently fighting to get passed in order to end this pipeline, this unaccountable pipeline of weapons and arms to the Philippine military. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. All right. Up next, we have Dan Moriarty with the Office of Global Concerns.
Hi, I am Dan Moriarty with the Maryknoll Office for Global Concerns. We represent Maryknoll missioners, Catholic priests, sisters, brothers, and lay missioners working in countries around the world, including many years in the Philippines. Miriam College was founded by the Maryknoll Sisters in 1926, and I have a good friend, former lay missionary, who's now working at the Mindanao Peace Building Institute. Maryknoll Sisters run an ecological sanctuary in Baguio City, and so we know from powerful personal experience what our faith teaches us is true, which is that the people of the Philippines are our brothers and sisters here in the United States. Our lives are bound up together. And our work is rooted in this simple truth. It's a simple truth, but it's a powerful truth and a countercultural truth. That we are all God's children, sisters and brothers across borders and oceans. We're called to encounter together, to relationship with our wider human family. And that encounter leads to solidarity, strengthens our commitment to human rights, and drives us to work for the common good. It grounds us in nonviolence, which is another thing we learned from the Filipino people through the People Power movement, both people from the church and civil society who inspired the world with their struggle for peace with justice. So when we hear about the reign of violence and terror in the Philippines under President Duterte, when we hear about the way political activists and faith groups are being tagged, when we read about martial law, especially today on this solemn anniversary, and extrajudicial killings, we cannot be silent. This is true for people of faith around the world. Faith demands global solidarity, but it's especially true for those of us here in the United States, because our government has a long history of violent colonial rule, militarism, and support for abusive governments in the Philippines. So we're tied to the Filipino people in that way too, and that's why we support the Philippines Human Rights Act. The United States government must not arm, fund, or otherwise support the Duterte regime in their violent persecution of Filipinos. We join the Faith Working Group on Human Rights in the Philippines, and we call on other faith groups to join us in this demand. Today is a day of solemn memory as we mark the anniversary of the declaration of martial law under the Marcos regime, but it's also a day of hope. Today is the International Day of Peace. So if I may, I'd like to take a moment for prayer. First, in silent memory of the people killed by the Marcos dictatorship since the 19th century, and all those who died under the current regime.